Welcome to the Power Rack Podcast, Episode 5, with me, your host, Todd Beecraft. I just want to remind people to like and subscribe to the channel. It does help out. And then I visit my website for past episodes, which is trapauthority.com. Today, my guest is Strongman, Highland Games, Static Monsters, and Grip Champion, all wrapped up into one. We will dive into the mindset and achievements of the super athlete I call Cyborg Mark Wechter. Rather than, I have a huge, almost a book of his resume I could sit here and read, but you know what? There's so much involved with this interview that I want to get right to it. So I'm going to bring Mark into the studio and we're going to jump right into the interview. Hey, Mark.
Hey, Todd.
Hey, man, thanks so much for doing this interview, man. It's going to be a good one. I had a lot of good response from it because I posted it like on the Grip site and stuff like that. So a lot of people had some stuff to say about me. There's so much to cover. Let's get right into it. Tell me about like you in high school. What was Mark Wechter like in high school?
I was kind of a nerd jock. I was very into track and field and throwing. I was not the guy who wanted to run far. I was never good at like long endurance stuff, but I threw, shot, javelin, and discus, and really focused on javelin because I'd been a pitcher before that in like little league, so I had a good arm. But I was trying to figure out how to throw javelin really well, and super focused on that. Got really into the training for that, and started lifting weights to try to get better at that. Okay, so that was kind of the start.
So, what was your height and weight? Like around high school years, like your later high school years.
I'm the same height I was walking into high school. And when I walked into high school, I weighed 164. When I walked out, I weighed 167. So I really I didn't grow much during high school. You know, I got stronger and I definitely got leaner. But it was sophomore year of college before I really was able to start, putting on some weight.
Back then, you mentioned that you started training with weights because of track for javelin, correct?
Right.
So did you have a strategy, or you just thought, well, by lifting weights, that'll make me a little stronger, or did you do any specific training to get better at the javelin at that point? Or?
Well, I figured, javelin's a lot of shoulder. So I didn't know any better. So I was in the, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I was doing bench like crazy, doing tons of reps, doing a bunch of sets of 5 and slamming it off my chest. And of course, when you're a thrower and you're throwing with one arm all the time, my right arm was stronger than my left. So the bar was going up at like a 30-degree angle all the time. It was not pretty. And, I know a lot better now, but I also, at that time, I didn't know, that really everything you throw, you got to have that leg strength and core strength. So I trained way more upper body than I did lower body. And mostly the lower body just came from doing like jumping exercises during track practice.
Yeah, because you obviously, you're strong overall, but you do have very strong legs also. Were you strong right out of the gate when you first started lifting? Like, because around other high school students that you lifted around, were you the strongest kid?
I didn't really have any perspective on like what was strong and what wasn't strong, because when I first started training, my brother was in high school, I was in 8th grade, and he would drag me to the gym to spot him mostly. And so between his sets, I would do bench because he was trying to break the school record for bench press. So I would jump in and I would do a set in between his sets. And I benched 180 as an 8th grader. And then when I was in high school, I didn't really start training with weights until my junior year. And first day I benched 195, and within a couple of weeks I was benching 2 1/4. I got up to 290 in high school, but, again, training it 3 days a week. And basically, I was a stupid high school kid, so I was trying to max every week. And so I just got kind of stagnant around that area for a while.
Yeah. So in high school, you did track. And did you end up going to college or not?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So
yeah, went to college, competed in javelin. Best I did was I got 3rd at nationals one year for javelin. So that was my biggest accomplishment in that area. And then after college, I stuck with it. I was trying to get, there's a provisional qualifier for the Olympic trials, and I was trying to hit that number. But ended up hurting my back. Then while I was coming back, I was doing incline bench press, warming up, and it got way back behind me. I pulled it back forward, and I tore a rotator cuff. And I kept trying to come back too soon, and just had problems with that for 6 years.
How'd that affect your throwing then? Because you were in college at this point.
Well, yeah, and throwing in college went pretty well. But at the end of college, when I was trying to keep going and try to make those Olympic trials, that's when I got the injury. And after when I got the injury, then that really forced me to work on other body parts because I couldn't work my shoulders and chest very much without it going bad on me. So that's when I really started getting into squats and deadlifts. And there was a guy at the gym who said, with the numbers that you're doing here, because again, there are only a couple of people pulling at this small gym that are pulling heavy. He said you should try a competition. So that was the first time that I actually did a powerlifting competition. I'd done a couple of bench comps in high school, but he talked me into doing a deadlift competition, the Gus Rethwich Wobdle. I did one of those in at the Salem Armory in like '96.
Wow, 96. Yeah. Wow, that's when our mutual friend is, Julie. That was her first year for competing also. Interesting. Yeah. Tell me, 96, where was it at again?
Salem Armory.
Jesus, I think that's where Julie competed in her first contest. It was, was it in March? Do you remember?
It was still during school. I'm not sure what month it was, but it was spring. So that may have very well been it.
Wow. That's a side story because a lot of people don't know her right here, but okay. Yeah. So that's where you kind of embarked down the road of competing in strength contests at that point. Did you completely go that direction at that point, or did you still stay with the javelin stuff, or were you out of college at this point?
I was out of college. I was teaching down in Brookings, Southern Oregon, and small town. So like I said, not a lot of people at my gym. So at that point I talked the guy who owned the gym into putting up record boards. And so for me, it's all, I love being able to chase numbers and try to hit certain numbers and all that kind of thing. Even if it's like a number of plates that are on the bar or whatever, it's very motivating. And so I just kept trying to like push and see, how heavy I could get my squat, how heavy I could get my dead. I was trying to bench 400 for the first time at that point. By the way, spoiler, I hit 391 pretty easily, and then missed 400, and then that was right around the time that my shoulder went bad again, so I couldn't even try it again for a couple of years.
And you never did have surgery on your shoulder, did you?
No. When they did they looked at it and pumped some air into it and put some dye into it and said, what you need to do is work the muscles around your shoulder harder to stabilize it. I was like, but when I work them, then that's when it goes bad. So it slides in the joint a little bit forward and back when I do anything, and it always has since then.
And coincidentally, you end up becoming one of the strongest lightweight strongman pressers in the whole nation. So obviously what you did for rehab worked. Competitions, do you have any idea how many you've done total?
I added it up, and not including track and field, just as far as like Highland Games and strongman. I've done 96 strongman comps.
You're almost at triple digits.
Right around 220 Highland. So a little over 200 total. At my peak, I was doing about 20 a year.
Wow.
And even in my 40s, I was doing like 15 to 17 a year most of the time. I mean, obviously not during COVID, but
Yeah. Well, later on in the interview, we're definitely going to get into your longevity because it's unheard of. I mean, in strength sports. As long as we're talking about contests right now, though, do you have a certain few contests that really stand out in your mind? I know you've done the biggest ones there is. So.
Well, the first comp I ever did was the Gold's Gym Oregon Strongest Man in Salem.
Perfect segue. Yeah. Let's talk about that one, right? And then we'll move on. So talk about the 2000, like what was that it wasn't, I think it was the second year they had it was 2000.
Right. Well, I'll tell you about, because I did the first year also.
Okay.
It's one of those things where they say, there's the saying of you don't pick strongman picks you. Well, I had this throwing background, and then I also had this weightlifting background. And so they announced it, and I was living in the area at the time. So I was like, hey, I'll give it a shot. And then Phil Martin, who was on World's Strongest Man twice, was involved in Highland Games in the area. And he offered to help me with it and kind of coach me and stuff like that. And, they had the bar bend and the truck pull and the Hucifeld stone. And we had, so they even had like an 18-inch deadlift as one of the events. And that's, deadlifts for me are good. And then throwing anything is good. And I didn't know it at the time, but carrying things for long distance works out well for me. I didn't do well on the truck pull at all. But that first day, I didn't know how I was going to do. There were, I think, 16 competitors. And it went really well. I ended up taking the overall, and I was super excited about it. But then there weren't many other comps. I didn't know of any other comps in the region.
There was, at that time, there wasn't. Yeah.
Right. The next one I did was that comp again the next year.
Yep.
And then you showed up, and the first event, if you remember, was that ugly homemade wooden log.
Yes.
You pressed it for 6, and I pressed it for 2, and it was falling all over the place. And I was like, who the hell is this guy? Because you were doing it like you were making it look easy. And I remember in that comp, it was interesting because you won 3 events, I won 3 events. But
wow, you do remember that well.
I got you I think it was the one where we threw the big stone where I won that one, and there were a couple of spacers, so that helped me in the overall.
Yeah, and then I don't know if you remember, but I got hurt doing the keg load, tore my bicep. Yeah, but and still went on to do the truck pull. But it's funny at the time. Of course, we didn't know each other at the time, but looking back, I mean, with me having ended my whole like strength competitive career, one of my highlights is to be able to say that I competed against you and beat you in a couple of events, because I could never do that now, or could never do that a few years after that. I was just like, I was at the end of mine, you're at the beginning of your up and coming career. And so it was kind of timing as far as when I caught you at the beginning stages and me at the end of being able to even beat you at a couple of events, because it's really unheard of at this point for someone to beat you in some events. So, I mean, it's kind of one of my, I don't brag about, but it's like, I'm proud of, because I beat the great Mark Wechter in a couple of events. I mean, who wouldn't be proud of that,
Well, one thing I talk about a lot is that was totally a turning point for me, because I use you as an example, because I say, a lot of times especially in something like that, where it's really close, and maybe somebody gets you on countback or whatever, and the person who gets second, a lot of times, it's sour grapes and they make excuses and they don't have a good attitude or whatever. But you were exactly the opposite of that. That's when you offered to, because you had equipment and stuff, you offered to have me come and start training with you. And that made a huge difference, because suddenly I had access to a yoke and the farmer's carries that you had made by, I think it was In Shape. Mm-hmm. And the platform for loading stones, all that stuff. So that was a big turning point. That helped me tremendously, just being able to prepare for other competitions. And, I was training on my own, and all I was really doing was gym lifting, because I didn't have any of the equipment.
Well, and you're so fun to train with, because, man, the attitude you would bring to the little training group that we had going at that time, which were actually some really good, solid people. Bryce Gimbel, Julie Havelka, I mean, and you, of course, and then me. But what a great training. I mean, wow, I wouldn't really want to trade that for anything, because the beginning stages of the whole strongman uprise, and to be where we were at, what a neat thing. I mean, you came, and I think we typically do it on Saturdays, man, and you would come and just bring it. And it was so cool, because we kind of competed against each other, but it was just really, we were always competing against ourselves when it came right down to it. And man, we pushed ourselves hard, man. And I look back at that training, and it's like, wow, I'm glad that I was not any older at the time, so I could still do a lot of what we were able to do. And God knows, I think that's why training with you, and I'm sure she'll say the same thing, is what helped Julie become the great champion that she became, because of training with someone like you. And if we had an issue with a piece of equipment, you'd make it. I mean, you were the one that made the stones, that was before anyone was really making stones, that you had to order them, and they're really expensive, and the shipping was huge. And here you were able to make them for us. So wow, what a difference that alone made. Let me see. There was something I wanted to. Well, we're going to get into your mindset, because you are literally one of the mentally toughest athletes that I've ever been around. And to me, I'm really into learning more about that these days. But before that, since we're talking about competition, strongman and Highland Games, I'm not real up on Highland Games stuff, so I don't know how different it can be. But as you know, strongman competitions are so different. Every contest is different from the last contest. So how do you strategize? Because you're a very smart individual. That's what I don't know if everyone quite understands, that you're not just this kind of dopey athlete that comes and does contests and happens to be strong. You're actually really intelligent, and you have a strategy, I'm sure, for each contest that you enter. And even there at the contest, the events, that's one thing about you being a mathematician that you are. You always knew exactly where you're at with the placings, what you needed to do. And so I'll talk a little bit about that as far the best you can, as far as how you would strategize in your training for a certain contest, and how you would change things up each time and things like that.
Yeah. I mean, the gym lifting stuff was always kind of the same, as far as, I wouldn't try to do these big off cycles and big on cycles for like deadlifts and squats and things like that. I would try to keep that. My classic thing was I would do 5 sets of 5 minutes apart as my heavy sets. But then as far as the individual events that they were going to have, I would try to find out as early as possible what they were going to have. And even if they would say like what the order of events were going to be. And then I would try to train usually 2 or 3 of those events a week. And I would figure out, like, for me, yoke and like truck pull, after I've done maybe 3 training sessions, like 3 consecutive weeks, then I'm back up to where I feel, solid in them and confident in them. And I'm not going to be able to, by training them extra beyond that, take off a bunch more time. I'm going to be able to maybe take off a little bit, but not very much. So it's better to spend my energy elsewhere. Because also, if there's an event that I'm like, for me, log press has always been a struggle, especially if it's just a max log, because there are a lot of guys out there that are specialists in that and have an Olympic weightlifting background, things like that. So I'm also sometimes, depending on the comp, if I know who's going to be there and I know like what they're going to be pressing because I've seen them in previous comps, then I can figure out, okay, is it better for me to try to gain 20 pounds on my log in the next 3 months because that's going to move me up 4 places, whereas taking a second off of my yoke time is probably not going to change my placing. And also I had to be really careful with, sometimes I would train yoke and farmers to the point where I would start getting really bad shin splints. Because when I was tired, I would start kind of slapping my feet while I'm walking, and I would usually be training them on asphalt. And so if you're in that position now the training is painful and you're limited by the pain rather than like what your muscles can do.
Wow.
So and then my goal would be 2 weeks out, I would run through pretty much all the events, and usually at 15%, 10 to 15% more than what the event weights were going to be in the competition.
Wow.
Because I know the adrenaline of the competition itself is going to make everything feel a little bit lighter, but I also want it to actually be, it's almost like the post-activation potentiation. I want it to feel really light. And so, when you pick up that, 700 or 800 pound yoke in a comp, but 2 weeks before you were doing 50 pounds more than that, or 80 pounds more than that, or 100 pounds more than that, you pick it up and it feels really light and smooth, and it feels like you can run with it. So a lot of it for me was, okay, I want to know exactly how the events are going to feel, and I want to even go a little bit beyond that. And then a lot of times too, it was if there was going to be, because back in the day they used to have 90 seconds for like log press if they're doing it for reps. And so I would do a lot of practice figuring out, okay, how many can I do where I feel like I could do maybe 1 or 2 more, and I'm going to set it down and I'm going to rest for how many seconds and then go again. And should I break it into 2 sets or 3 sets? And how hard are the cleans on the weight that they're asking me to do? Because if you're cleaning and pressing away, do I want to clean it twice or 3 times, or is it better to do two sets than 3? And in a minute, for me, even now, if I'm doing a comp, I'm usually going to clean it and press it until about 20, 25 seconds. I'm going to set it down and wait until about 40, 45 seconds, then do 1 more set. And I'm not going to, on the first set, go until I miss a rep. I'm going to go to where I feel like I could do 1 more relatively comfortably, and then I'd probably miss the second one beyond that. So that's kind of my strategy going in, because I've tried in practice, and pretty much for any event, I can go really hard for about 40 seconds, and then it fades unless there's some sort of break in there. And I learned that in front of your house pulling trucks, because I would try to pace myself on the truck pull, and after 40 seconds, I just felt like there was nothing in my legs, nothing in my arms, didn't have a lot to pull with, and maybe I had gone 60 feet. So on the next set, I would go way harder from the start, and I would get to about 80 feet in the first 40 seconds, and then it would still feel like crap after that. So use it while you can. You got the anaerobic where you can just go really hard before that fatigues.
Right. I know, and sometimes we train on a hill too when doing the truck. With
the rope attached to the fire hydrant. Yeah.
Well, you have such confidence in yourself at competitions. You never seem really to be intimidated by anybody when you walk out. I've never seen you lose it at a competition. When I say lose it, I mean start like kind of panicking because you maybe didn't place as well in a certain event than you would like. You seem to always be in control of yourself. Does that come from your confidence come from how well you've trained yourself for that contest, or are you just a really confident individual in the first place?
It's absolutely from preparation, because one of the things I love about Strongman and Highland Games is the preparation and like trying to figure out, okay, what should I be doing 6 weeks out versus 5 weeks out versus 4 weeks out to get ready. And I always wanted to feel like I had out-prepared everybody else there. Nice. I wanted to walk in feeling like I had spent more time and energy getting ready, visualizing, doing all the training, thinking about the training, eating correctly, all that stuff, getting the right sleep. I wanted to make sure that there wasn't like something that I was kind of leaving out that maybe somebody else was doing better, because I wanted to feel like, okay, I've put myself in the best possible position to win. I might not win. There might be somebody who just smokes me that day. I may mess up, but I've done enough preparation. I feel like things are going to, I know how to do these events. I've trained them a whole bunch. I'm ready for these events. And I'm really focused. And so my goal is I want to hit my numbers. And if those numbers win, great. If they don't, but if I hit my numbers and I get second or third, fine. I hit my goals. And so I always felt like, I put myself in a position to win, or at least to make it hard for somebody else to win.
Wow. I like that. That's how I always was with powerlifting. Is really always about me and my numbers. And right. In a competition, when the dust settled, however I placed, I did. And unfortunately, I many times placed high, but really it was about the numbers. I mean, I tell this story every once in a while, but I placed first and won a Northwest Bench Press Championships in 1993, won the contest, didn't get the number I went out there for, cried on the way home, on the drive home in Auburn, Washington, because I would have rather taken third place but have gotten my number. But anyway, so I do understand what you mean about that. We talked about pressing a little bit, and I know the audience likes stories. You went against Willie Wessels, one of the best 242-pound powerlifters of all time, in a contest one time, and there was a pressing story, an overhead press story. Do you want to tell that? I'm going to show a picture of you overhead pressing. I know it's not from that contest, but I'm going to do it anyway. But while you tell the story.
So it was in Albuquerque. It was New Mexico's Strongest Man. Willie was putting it on, and then when he saw that I was down there, I mean, I'm from Oregon. He didn't really expect me to be there, but my wife's family is from there. So we were down visiting family, and I said, hey, I want to do this comp as well. And so I jumped in I planned to do this comp before we went. And then Willie said I was there. So he's like, I'm going to compete today too. And it's one of those ones where it's like what could have been, because on the tire, we're flipping this tire uphill, and he ends up on his 7th flip. It skips like an inch across the line. And on my 7th flip, it's like 2 inches short of the line. So I had to do an extra flip. So he got me by like half a second on it. And then we did this pressing one, and it was just a barbell. And because of the shoulder position on barbell, it's a lot harder on my shoulders than doing a log where you're more tricep. Correct. So I put it behind my neck, and I did it that way. And so I went up to 300-ish, maybe a little bit more. And so Willie did it in front, and he ended up getting me on it just barely. And then after that, he made sure that he put in the rules that you couldn't do pressing from behind the neck. And also, that's the same day because when I started doing powerlifting, I did like a kind of an Ed Cohn frog stance. I didn't do wide sumo, but I had my forearms just inside of my knees. And so at that comp, they had an 18-inch deadlift, and Willie and they kept calling numbers, and we kept passing until it's like 760, pass, 770, pass. We got to, I think I opened at 800 and he opened at 805. We go ahead. And then we went to like 840 and he went 845. And then I pulled 875 and he pulled 880. And then it was like 2 days later, he's like, you can't do sumo on an 18-inch dead. It's illegal. Brother. Come on, Willie. But what it came down to was the last event of the day. Somebody, I don't know why, they volunteered their truck, like a big like F-350 or whatever. They took the bed off of the tailgate off the back, and you had these like 5 different objects that you had to load in the back of their truck. And one of them was like a big cube of metal. It was like 160 pounds. There was a keg full of water and sand. There were a couple other things. And so you're running back and forth, and you're trying to, like from 5 feet away from this truck, you're just like chucking them in there, and it's banging the crap out of this truck and leaving all kinds of dents. And it came down to, on one of them, I went to throw it in the back, and it hit like the top of the bumper, but the back side, and was starting to fall. So I had to pick it back up and put it back in because it came down to that. That was the last event. And so I ended up losing that event by 0.4 of a second, which cost me the overall.
Oh man.
Really got me. And I had never competed against him before. I had seen him before. I never competed against him. And it was a great battle back and forth.
Yeah.
It was a really fun day. Yeah.
Well, you definitely don't lose too many contests. That might be one of your one and only loss. But and I want to make sure I point out to people here too that you strive for competition. You're not afraid to compete against somebody for the competition factor of it. Because I know for a fact at a contest that I hosted, you could have easily came in there and cleaned house on the lightweight division, but you're like, you know what? I want to go against the heavyweights just because I want a good, solid, competition that day. I'm like, you sure? And because I've got a top-notch power lifter competing. And I said, he outweighs you by quite a bit. And you're like, I don't care. I'm going to come in. I want to go against him. You're right, Todd. He's a great power lifter, pulling some big numbers in the deadlift, squatting big numbers. I'd love to compete against him. I'm like, all right, there's a huge weight difference, but let's do it. And you won, but it pushed you a little harder that day than what you would have been pushed. The weights were heavier because it was the heavyweights. And but you came in there just like confident. It's like that you weren't even like a little nervous or anything. And unless you hide your nervousness. Do you get nervous before a contest, or have you done so many now that it doesn't really affect you in that way?
When I think of the word nervous, I think of it as like a negative thing. I get anxious, like I just want to get out there and start competing. But also, once you have the weight in your hands on that first event, then it's like, okay, we're up and running now. So let's get into this. Let's pull some big numbers or do some big numbers. And one of the things for me, I always like, you kind of compete at the level of your competition. And if it's like if you went to a bench meet and nobody else is bench number 300, okay, well, it's going to be easy for you to win the comp, and you're probably not going to hit a huge number because nobody's really right there with you or pushing you or things like that. And so also when I got my pro card, they said you can't compete against lightweights because you're pro. You can't compete amateur. And you also couldn't compete against amateur and heavyweight. Before they had said you could compete in the heavyweights. And then they said you can't compete against the amateur heavyweights because it's not fair to them. I'm like, how's that not fair? I'm giving away a bunch of weight. I'm a lightweight.
Yeah, right.
So I did a bunch of comps where I could compete in whatever class, but it would be exhibition only, and only in Platinum Plus shows could I compete, and then I would compete against the heavyweights. And so I also did some shows in Canada where they had like their own federation and everything, and there were no weight classes. There was no lightweight. You would just be. There was one comp where I was the next lightest guy was 324, and I was about 235 at the time. And for me, that was always like, okay, so it's going to, I better bring my lunch because going against these guys is going to be brutal. And, at my very best, I might be able to, get up there on some events. And they're, like on a deadlift, it doesn't really matter that much how much you weigh. Whereas like something on a truck pull, or the one that was terrible for me was single fingers, because you got all these guys who are like 6'5", 6'6", where they have the leverage when they're walking them up. That makes it a lot easier. So there were some, and even like if there was a carry of any kind, I don't have a big deep chest. I can get that Hucifeld or a Conan's wheel or whatever. I can get it real close to my center of gravity, and I can go far, and I'm not carrying a whole bunch of my own body mass. Whereas some of these big guys have the big barrel chest, the weight's way out in front of them, and it's pulling them down, and they're having to fire their erectors, and it's pushing on their diaphragm, and they can't breathe and all that. So in some events, it was actually advantageous. The bad ones were they kept increasing the height of all the stone platforms.
Right. I know there's been times where there's been some pretty high, and you're right at 6 foot, correct?
I was 6 foot in high school. I've done a lot of lifting. I'm closer to 5'11" now. Okay.
Yeah, I know there's been some where the stone load platform has been pretty high. Wasn't the one in Idaho and it kind of an issue?
Yeah, the first platform was 6 foot, and people kept missing, and it was on grass, right? It was plywood platforms, and so they kept missing, and it kept falling right in front, and so now there was a hole. There's this uneven divot that's like 4 inches deep, and the first time I went to put it on, I had to like use my forehead and try to put it on, and the platform fell over, and so they had to bring the platform back up, and now I'm trying to load it again, and the first stone was like an egg shape, and so nobody was able in my class to load that first stone. And so they decided we're just going to throw that event out. I was like, why don't we just go to the second platform and do those stones from there on? Because those platforms were fine and the ground was okay. But yeah, it was a weird one.
Yeah, there's been some weird stuff. California, Julie had a weird thing happen to her down there, but we won't need to go into all that. But you mentioned carrying the Hucifeld stone, and in your whole career as far as strongman and stuff, which has stemmed for a long time now, what one of your highlights you mentioned to me was a Hucifeld stone carry that you did. And even I wasn't really aware of that. So I want you to talk about that. And I have a picture of that while you're talking about it a little bit.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Because, you know, when they say Hucifeld stone in like a Highland Games, they have it in Highland Games sometimes, but they also have it in Strongman. And, you know, a lot of times it'll be a kind of the Hucifeld actual stone shape, but made out of metal, or it'll be a piece of concrete, or it'll be just a kind of a natural river rock. But the stone, the actual Hucifeld stone is in Hucifeld, Iceland. And it's a 190 kilo, 418 pound stone. And there are 3 challenges for it. And one was, can you pick it up from the ground? The second one is, can you pick it up and set it on what they call a plinth, which is a waist high stone? And the other one was, it's at the end. It was called it's at the end of an old goat pen that's made out of rock. And so they also call it the pen slab, because that's the one that they would have to move to get the goats in or out. But can you pick it up and carry it all the way around? And I had seen that in, I think it was 91 or 92 when they had a World's Strongest Man. And they didn't have them walk around the pen, but they had them walk straight. And they let them use tacky and tape and stuff like that. So I had heard about this, and I'd seen some videos of like Dr. Bill Crawford, Andreas Gudmundsson, a few other, like mostly of these like Nordic guys who had carried the Hucifeld stone all the way around the pen. And I'd always done well at any kind of like carrying event, and especially Conan's wheel. And so I trained really hard for that, and we went over there. And so I actually had to pick it up 3 different times, because it started out, I had a sweatshirt and sweatpants on, and it was slipping. So I took the sweatpants off and put on jeans. And then even with that, it was slipping down my arms because of my sweatshirt. So I took the sweatshirt off, and then I picked it up, and I didn't know how far I was going to be able to go with it on the first few steps, but I made it all the way around, which is like the big challenge. They have all these challenge stones all around Iceland, and this is the most famous and heaviest one. So to do that really made me feel like, you know, I put in a lot of work over a lot of years, and to do something like that was pretty darn cool. And it just, you know, it was one of those things where it's like, okay, the stone isn't going to have a bad day. You know, it's not like you went to a competition and maybe there wasn't any, maybe the best guys who are better than you happened to not be there. Or maybe there was somebody who was beating you but had one bad event or got injured or something else. It's not like that. I mean, I like that it's a stone. It always weighs the same. It's kind of man versus nature, that whole caveman mentality. And to go out there and face down the stone and see if it was something you could do. And I'll tell you what, the next day, I couldn't hardly pull the emergency brake in the car because I was so sore.
Wow.
I was so shocked. And I had watched, there's a video of a guy who had trained for 2 years getting ready for it. There's a DVD through Milo magazine, or Iron Mind. And there's this story, you know, he's carrying the stone, and he gets like 2/3 of the way around, and he hears Velcro tearing and realizes he's not wearing Velcro, and it's his bicep tendon tearing off.
Oh, God.
So I'll tell you what, if you, when I was doing it, I got about 3/4 of the way around, and the sides of it are pretty vertical. So it felt like it wanted to slide down. And I was like, do I let it go and protect myself, or do I just grab it harder and go? Like, how often am I going to get to try this? How often am I going to be in Iceland and be healthy and all that stuff? So I just gripped it harder for another like 5 or 6 seconds, made it around. So yeah, that one meant a lot.
Well, as long as we're talking about stones, there's another achievement you're very proud of also, which was the 400-pound stone. Talk about that a little bit.
Oh, that was cool. That was in Idaho.
Okay.
Yeah, it was Slater. Slater Stones had brought out a whole bunch of stones, because Marshall White at the time was going to try to break the world record for heaviest stone over, I think it was a 54-inch bar. And he was trying a 535 stone. And he actually lapped it and got par way up with it, but just couldn't quite get it that day. And he tried it like 3 times. But the last event they had was, they had it was a max stone. So you got to lift 3 times. And each time, you know, if you loaded that stone over the bar, then it was almost like doing a deadlift type of powerlifting thing. You could then go up to a heavier stone. You got to choose your next stone. And so it was the end of the day. We were out in the heat. And I didn't know how well I was going to do on that day. But I did like a 320, then a 360, and the 360 felt good. And so I said, yeah, let's go for 400. So I grabbed the 400, and I was really amped up about it. So I pull it from the ground and it felt really good coming up into my lap, and I didn't feel like I needed to lap it. So I went through the middle and took it up and over and one motion did. And so that was, everything kind of lined up that day, that things were just right. And yeah, my stones have been going really, really well. I've been training. I have a 384 stone that to a 48-inch platform. I've been one motioning for sets, but not at the end of a day of competing.
Right.
So I felt really good about that one. And they made a big deal about how that was the first time a lightweight had done a 400-pound stoning competition. But
what did you weigh? What did you weigh? Do you remember what you weighed?
At that point in time, I fluctuated between 219 and 224.
Okay.
I had a hard time for a lot of years trying to get up to the top of the 231. I don't know if you may not know this. The first year of Oregon's Strongest Man at Gold's, it was 200 and under, and I weighed 194. And then the next year they made it 210, and then they made it 220, and then it was 225, and then Dion and Willie made it 231. And so I was always like trying to because I have a hard time gaining weight. I've had genetic testing, the 23andMe, and it came back that one of my genes makes it so it's hard for me to gain weight. I have a tendency to be lighter than average. And I have the other one that was interesting was I have the CCG gene, which it says it's common in throwers, jumpers, and sprinters. So I'm more of like a quick twitch, short duration guy. I'm not an endurance. If you're like, hey, train for a marathon. No, I'm not built for that at all.
But the funny part is with your mental toughness, if you set your mind to it, I know you'd achieve that.
Yeah, but it wouldn't be a good time.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because you mentioned weight gain. I remember I hadn't seen you in a number of years. Then I saw you again at one of the 24-hour fitnesses, and you had put on some weight actually. And I asked you some of your I guess you could call secrets. And you're big for putting on weight, peanut butter, heaping tablespoons of peanut butter. So I always remember you saying
5 tablespoons of peanut butter for a while, what I was doing was I would put in a cup of Cheerios, a cup of milk, and then a scoop of protein powder and 5 tablespoons of peanut butter, because every tablespoon of peanut butter is 100 calories.
Yeah.
And during the summer, I would, a lot of times I'd be working out twice a day, and I would get up at 2:30 in the morning and have a shake just to keep the calories coming in. Because even now, I'm still 5,500 calories a day to maintain. So it's always been a struggle. And the most I ever put on in 1 year is I went up 11 pounds in 1 year, but that was all when I was in my 20s. So now it's like, it seems like since I hit 40, I lose about 3 pounds a year, even if I keep my training about the same and my nutrition the same and everything else. So I'm trying to slow down that regression, but I'm never I got up to where I was legitimately right around 240 for about 3 years. Okay. And just started, once I hit 41, 42 years old. So now I'm down to about 223.
Wow. Yeah. Well, before we get into the mindset that you have and your mental toughness, because I keep mentioning that, and I definitely want to get into that with you, but let's talk, we talked about some competitions. So I'm going to throw some pictures at you and just talk about these particular competitions, and talk about what's your biggest deadlift and what's this?
That one is, that's like it's like 727, something like that.
And real quick, there's no straps being used on this. I want people to notice that.
Yeah. And it wasn't on one of the super bendy bars.
There you go.
So I hadn't competed in a powerlift. I was just training strongman, but my deadlift was going really well in training. I was up to where I was doing 745 for doubles and 705 for sets of 5 at the end of a workout. So my deadlift was going great. And this was, I went to a competition in Lake Oswego, and I pulled this one. And then on my second lift, I went to 803. And because we were standing on a rubber mat, as I pulled it, my heels kind of went down a little bit, and I ended up falling over backwards. So and it was a little bit above my knees, which above my knees, at the top end for me, the 18-inch heads are great for me. The top half of my deadlift is better than my bottom half. And so then I went to 810 so that I would have somebody else in between, so I'd have a little bit more time. So I tried 810, and the exact same thing happened. I got it up above my knees, and I started to pull through, and my heels went down. I fell over backwards. So it was really frustrating.
And I will vouch for the fact that which is a good lead into my next thing we'll show here. But I will vouch for the fact that at the top end, you're effing untouchable. And let's proof of that is static monsters. Talk about your static monsters. Not only do you not only do you host the contest, which is quite an undertaking in and of itself, but you compete in it. So, and I've been there to witness all this. So talk about this one. This was 2018.
Yeah.
And it was a good year.
No, I'm just going to real quick say, for people that don't know, static monsters.
Yeah.
Everybody on the same day in late October around the world in like 40 or 50 locations, they do 3 attempts on a thick bar of Holland's axle deadlift from 18 inches, and then you get 3 attempts on log press, and they add your 2 weights together, and that's your total. So for me, like I said, my shoulders have never been the greatest, so it was all about, okay, can I be competitive on the log press, and then can I try to put up a really big deadlift? And so they have the 231 class. And so one year I pulled, it was like 835, and I missed 857. And then the other year I pulled right around the same, like 840. And so it was cool because then you don't know how you did it in your local, but you don't know how you did internationally until like 5 or 6 days later when they compile everything. And so it was really cool when they posted it, because one of the things I wanted to do was I wanted to hit 500 kilo total. Like 1102, and so I got a little above that, not much, but when they posted the deadlift leaders, I had the lead in the deadlift, and it was kind of cool to look in the column on the right of the screen there, where you look at the top. I'm the only one that's a master.
Yeah,
and all the other guys are not. And then my deadlift was enough that I came out ahead on the total too. So that was really cool because you never know in your 40s. You never know at any point are you going to drop off a lot and not really be that competitive anymore. So it was nice to know that I could still, hang with the young guys, kind of like last year at the Arnold, same type of thing where, it came out really well for me. I was 48. The guy who got third was 24. So that was kind of cool to somebody half my age, even be competing with them. Yeah.
That is amazing. I mean, coming from a guy who's now 58, me, I remember being in my mid 40s, and I was strong, but I had also been dealing with a lot of injuries. And yeah, you can still be very strong. It's just you really have to work to avoid the injuries, which we'll go into in just a second here. But since you mentioned the Arnold, let's talk about those accolades a little bit. Talk about this one here.
Yeah, so they have a Highland Games now at the Arnold. They don't have all the events because in real Highland Games, you're outdoors, and some of the stuff, like you throw hammers and they go pretty far. They can't do that indoors, of course. So and they also have a weight they're throwing for distance that would normally be a metal weight. Since they're doing it indoors, Rogue made this. You can see the bag that I'm holding on to. It's basically like a duffel bag full of I think it's sand or rubber. So that's a 42 pounder. And so you're spinning a couple of times in this, what they call a trig, that box. And then you're throwing it as far as possible. And it's very cool because you're surrounded on most sides with all these fans, and they're cheering like crazy. And then each time Arnold will come over and watch part of the competition. And so it's been, as he's come over and, he came over and was like asking me about what the girls were doing and some of the events. And tell you what, I've met some of the guys that were like kind of heroes to me from bodybuilding and strongman and stuff like that, they kind of brushed you off. Arnold came over, asked me a bunch of questions, wished me the best of luck the rest of the day, and shook my hand. It was just awesome. So that was a fantastic experience.
Would you say that in Highland Games, since I don't know that world very much, is this probably the most prestigious contest a Highland Games athlete can do? Because it is such, like it says here, worldwide competition, and it's such well-known.
There's this one, and there's one in Pleasanton, California each year on Labor Day weekend that's been there. I think it's 153rd year now. So that one's considered national championship. This one is kind of considered world championship because, like, the guy who got second this last year was from Austria, and you have guys that are from Germany and Holland, and you get some guys that will come in from Australia or Scotland. So it's definitely more of an international competition.
How many times have you won that?
I've won it twice. Yeah.
Wow.
I won it in 2 different classes. This last year was the first time that they had lightweights, and the guy who ran it asked me in one of the previous years, he's like, "How much do you weigh right now?" And I was like, "I'm like 220." He goes, "Would you be willing to drop to 200 if we had a lightweight event?" I said, "Sure, why not?" Because the problem for me is it's easy to lose weight, but it's hard to put it back on.
Well, how much notice did you have to drop 20 pounds?
Well, he told me like the year before, but I started losing weight for it. I decided I was going to start 3 months out. And in the first week I dropped 9 pounds. I was like, no, this is too early. So I ended up only starting dropping my weight about 3.5 weeks before. And really I dropped, I didn't change my diet all that much. I didn't take out the sodium and do that kind of thing, because whenever I do that, I don't feel very good, don't feel very strong. So I started doing some fasted cardio in the morning, and then
I just started doing that. How much do you stop right there for just a second? How much do you feel that helps you doing the fasted? I just literally within the last week started doing that to burn some fat. Talk to me a little bit about that, like your thoughts.
Yeah. So, and I'm a numbers guy, so I was writing down every night, what did I weigh? Every morning, what did I weigh? So I could also see, like the night before the competition, what do I need to do? Can I be 202 and will I be 200 in the morning? So I was charting that. And then I got to a point where I was at like 212, and 3 days later I was at 211. I was like, okay, that's not quite fast enough. So I added in the fast cardio, and then I started dropping about 1.5 pounds a day.
Wow.
And I got down to, I didn't want to do like a big water cut or something. So I got down to like 203. And I went into a sauna for like 20 minutes. And then the morning of the competition, I was about 0.5 pound over. So I went to a Planet Fitness that was across from our hotel, and did like 10 minutes of cardio on a bike, and went and weighed in at 199.8. And the nice thing was we didn't compete. You got to weigh in at 8 o'clock in the morning. We didn't compete until noon. So I had 4 hours to just, get a bunch of water. And I like to get extra sodium in day of competition, and, eat some, like I had some Waffle House, had some eggs and a waffle and a few other things. Yeah. So by the time we competed, I was probably 204, but felt a lot better than I had at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Right. Were you seeing yourself getting leaner as the weeks went on? When you started doing so it was definitely it was fat you were taking off, correct? Yes. What little fat you have in the first place. I'm excited about this portion right here. Your mindset. Please delve into that as deeply as you possibly can. It's like what. I know it's even hard to explain, so do it the best you can. As far as the mindset you're into before a workout, and just in general, like do you go to bed at night and do you give gratitude for what you've accomplished that day? And do you think about your goals? Do you wake up thinking about them? And as far as goal setting and visualization, throw that all in the mix, and I'll just let you take over from here.
Okay. So on a day-to-day basis, like during the week, after a workout, I kind of go back through the workout in my mind, like what went well, what didn't go well, where was I out of position? Do I need to work on any like stabilizers for what caused me to be out of position? And how can I make it so if I did that same workout the next time, it would be at least more efficient, if not necessarily more weight. I would hit positions better. Every night before I go to sleep, I'm thinking about, okay, what am I training tomorrow? And then also usually at least a couple of days ahead. Because, okay, what am I training tomorrow? And obviously you can't just be going by the seat of your pants. You have to plan these things out. What am I training tomorrow? What am I going to train first? How much warm up am I going to do? What time do I want to be at the gym? So what time does that mean I need to have my last water intake? What time does that mean I need to have my last pre-workout meal? What am I having for that pre-workout meal? Do I want to have caffeine during this workout or not? If so, when do I want to take that in? And I'm thinking through like, mostly anymore, I think more through like the sets and reps that I want to do. I don't think as much about the numbers as I used to, because I've gotten into trouble a few times where I've committed in my head that these are the numbers I'm going to hit. And you start warming up and things don't feel good. And you're kind of forcing yourself to do something that your body's not ready for that day. I mean, like anymore, my psoas gets really tight sometimes, especially I do most of my lifting without a belt. Like if I'm within 100 pounds of my max on a dead or a squat, I'll put a belt on, not super tight, but somewhat tight, but anything less than that, I won't. Cause you know how strongman is, if you don't have a strong core, it's not going to go well, especially if you're running with a keg full of water that's sloshing and fighting you every step of the way. It's no good. So I'm trying to plan things out well ahead and commit to, okay, these are the rep schemes that I'm going to do. And I'm going to base the weights on each set. So if I'm doing like, I'm going to go up for 4 or 5 sets, maybe go to a heavy double or triple, and then drop back down and do a couple of sets of 5. And I also like to do a lot of slower pause reps at the end of each exercise. So if I'm doing like, say, squats first, I might do 4 warm-up sets and then do 5 working sets. And then usually on the way back down, I'll drop a plate off, do some pause reps, and go to failure or almost to failure. And then I'm going to do probably 3 more different exercises for legs that day, and then some rolling and all that kind of stuff. So I spend a lot more time doing like rolling and grinding, the whole Graston. I do a lot more of that than I used to. So I try to plan that in as well. But as far as with competitions coming up, every night.
Real quick, Mark, since you mentioned something, let's stay with the workout a second. So when you get to a workout that you've already visualized, you've already thought about pretty heavily, and you get a day that's not going like, how do you keep your mind from like, well, what do I do now? This isn't what I planned. Like, how do you reset yourself in that workout and then continue on?
It's mostly, it's like, how much blood can I squeeze from this stone? Okay, things aren't going the way they're supposed to. I'm wise enough now that I know I'm risking injury if I force myself, but the worst thing I can do is just not do it.
Right.
I got to do what I can on that day and try to be smart about it. I used to just, I would push myself too far sometimes. I'm better about that, but I'm always thinking about what is my competition doing? And I'm always kind of pretending that they're just on top of it all the time. They're never injured. They commit 100% of the time. I always think of it like, okay, are they going to do 1 more rep than me or 1 more set than me? Or are they going to, am I going to take an off day and they're not taking an off day? What's going on there as well? And I don't usually like contact people that, unless they're, good friends. Sometimes when I'm going into a comp like this last Arnold, other people that were going to be competing against me started contacting me and asking me like, hey, how are your throws going? And how's this going? How's that going? Hey, they're trying to get information. Fine, whatever. I don't want to know what you're doing because I want to, in my mind, think that you're throwing bombs. And I need to be throwing bombs to have a shot against you. And so I'm going against this almost like mythical figure in pretty much all the competitions where I need to be perfect or close to perfect.
So you get in the gym, and we'll go back to this so I can get it a little more. This is for me because I love this stuff. So you're in there, and your workout is not going according to plan. Do you sit down for a few minutes and kind of reevaluate what you need to do that day and do something different? Do you continue on with that? Let's say it's the log press. Just go with that. And it's not going. It's not a good day for you in that particular workout. Do you just stop and go to a different event, or what do you do?
It depends. So if it's not a good day because like I'm stumbling when I'm pressing, I'm all over the place, then I'll reduce the movement and I won't do the clean. I'll set it in a rack and I'll just do strict presses, or I'll sit on the ground and do Z presses, or I'll just work on the cleans, just cleaning. So I'll break it down into pieces instead of doing. If the whole thing isn't going well, I'll be like, okay, I'm going to do a bunch where I'm just going to take it from the ground to my lap and do a real solid clean and make sure it's perfect every time. I'm going to do some doubles or triples with that. Then I'm going to put it in a rack. I'm going to do some just top end stuff. And I'm not even going to put it all together that day, but I'm going to have the components of it that I can work on independently. If it's though, like I'm not doing well today because my shoulder is hurting or my soda is acting up or something like that, then I'll be like, okay, so I was going to be focusing on primarily shoulders and triceps today. So what other exercises? I'm going to go over and probably do some narrow bench press instead. I'll probably do I like to do a lot of bottoms up presses with kettlebells because it also makes me really focus on gripping hard. So I'll do those and I'll do them single arm, and then I'll do like narrow grip bench because I can still get the muscle groups that I wanted to work. And I can adjust the weights on those. And especially with the kettlebells, if my shoulder is like acting up, it's usually the front of my right shoulder. And so I can adjust how I'm holding it, what angle I'm at, and I'll sometimes even go to bands if that's not working out. And one of my kind of defaults on shoulders, if the front shoulder's not feeling good, I work my rear delts a lot. Because for that shoulder that kind of slides around a lot, when I work my rear delts 2 or 3 times a week, it kind of pulls everything back into position and it feels better and feels healthier.
Wow. Gosh, I'm glad I pulled that more information. That's really good stuff. I love how you say you, instead of if you went in there to do the log press and it's not going that well that day, you actually break it down into little segments. I love that. I'm glad I got that out of you. Talk to me before we talk about your competition mindset. Talk to me about your drive to the gym that day. Because let me just say that so many people these days don't focus on what they need to be doing on the way to the gym. They're playing with their phones. They're talking to people, texting people, just communicating and playing on their phones. And I remember in the old days when I was at my prime of bench pressing and stuff, dude, I'd go home from work, get reset, get my gym bag and everything set. And then on the drive to the gym, it had the music cranked up. I was drinking my coffee or my soda pop at that time. And by the time I got to the gym, because I'm mentally thinking about what I'm doing in that work, I'd be so fired up. Like I've mentioned before, it's like opening my car doors, like opening the cage and letting the animal out and going in there and just tearing shit up. I think that's missing in a lot of people's workouts today is the drive to the gym, how important that is of setting your mind. And tell me about your drive to the gym.
Well, it's pretty similar to yours. It's
love it.
Yeah, get some good music going. And also I'm starting to think through, okay, what am I going to be doing when I get to the gym again? I'm refocusing on, okay, how many warm-up sets am I going to do? And also it's like the whole, like Pavlov's dog, you ring the bell and the dog starts to salivate because he associates that with when he gets his food. When I drive to the gym without even having to do much, I'll be maybe drinking an energy drink or something, but just the closer I get to the gym, my heart rate starts to increase.
Yes.
When I walk into the gym, especially if it's going to be like I enjoy the heavier days. Like I consider, people are like, what do you do or how many off days do you take a week? Like I consider the days where I just focus on smaller muscle groups. Like if I'm doing some like calves and biceps and abs that day and doing a bunch of rolling because tomorrow is going to be like deadlift, I still go to the gym and I still try to be active and do like active recovery and all that kind of thing. But I consider that kind of an off day because it's not as intense. Those days I'm not getting as amped up, and I have to try to almost actively prevent myself from getting amped up because I know it's not smart for me. I can't go super hard every day. But the days where it is, today's going to be heavy squat day. Okay. The hair on my arms is standing up as I walk up the stairs to go to the squat rack. And then I still have to be careful because, again, I have to try to be smart and be like, okay, here are the appropriate warm-up weights that I need to do to get ready. I can't just go in there because at my strongest and when I was squatting really big in my mid-late 30s, I would go in, I would do no warm-up, no rolling, no nothing. My warm-up was I put 2 plates on each side and I would do a set of 5. I put 2 more plates on each side, I'd do a set of 5. I put 2 more plates on each side, I'd do a set of 5, and then I'd go heavy. And then if I did that now, I'm probably shooting a kneecap across the room, Got to do more body maintenance and slower warm up. And I also, I'm a deep believer in, you got to also be prepared to kind of like time out how long it's going to be between your warm up sets. Because if I go in and I'm like, I want to get to the heavy weights, I'll deadlift today. And so, I'll put on 135, do a set, 225, 350. By the time I've done 315, it's only been like 90 seconds and my back is starting to tighten up.
Wow.
So there is that. And so it is definitely, you're a caged tiger and you're pacing back and forth and you're ready to go, but you also got to look at the clock and be like, okay, not yet. It's not smart yet. That's
when it kind of comes in handy to have training partners because you can pace yourself with them going on their sets too. You're right about that. And you're also right on, you have to tone it down for some of your more minor workouts because you need to let your CNS and your adrenal system rest a little bit too, so which is good. Sticking with the gym stuff, one more question. Core work. Do you do direct core work, abs and stuff, or do you just rely on your heavy event training for your core work?
I rely mostly on, and when I say core, I think we're talking about abs, because back, the back of my core is strong. But I used to have a problem when I was in my late 20s where if I was doing heavy deads and one side hit before the other, I would get a pop in my low back, and for like 3 days, I was just kind of shot. And so then I started working my abs really hard to counter that, and I've never had that problem again. So the reason that I don't belt most of the time is I feel like I'm getting my core work there. But then once or twice a week, I'll get on one of those machines where you have your hands up above you and you're pulling your elbows to your knees. I'll do some of that, and then also I'll go in where you have the straps that go below your elbows and you're pulling your knees up to your elbows, so a little bit more lower there. But I don't spend a ton of time just working abs directly because you get so much. It's just like, it's kind of like when I know we're going to talk about grip at some point. You get a lot of grip just tangentially because you're picking up these weights and moving around these 45s and picking up the bar for the first several sets on like deads without any grips on you or anything like that.
Right. Okay, let's jump into your mindset for competition. What's your drive to the competition like? And I know you've had a lot of funny stories. I think once there was a McDonald's story. You had to practically bathe in a McDonald's bathroom or something because you've been on the road going for long road trips. But your mindset going into a competition and while you're at the competition, what's Mark Wechter thinking about?
Well, day of the competition, the night before, I visualize every event in slow motion and from several angles. So I'm pretending like I'm a spectator that's standing to the side of me while I'm doing the yoke. What would that look like in slow motion? Now I'm behind me.
Mark, real quick, when are you visualizing? Like in bed at night or before you getting up, or what's
the night before?
Okay.
And for several nights, many nights leading up to it, I'm visualizing like my training the next day. I'm visualizing the events going perfectly. But the night before, I'm envisioning what's the actual competition setting going to roughly be like. I'm going to have tons of people. There's going to be tons of noise. What is my pickup of the yoke going to look like? What's that first step? And, once it's a few steps in, that's all I'm really visualizing. And I'm visualizing that like it would be maybe 20, 30 seconds of just visualizing that start from 3 different angles. And then I'm doing that for each event all the way through. The problem is, it also gets your adrenaline going. So then the night before it was always hard to sleep. And so, but one of the things I found out is it's not the night before the competition that matters as much. The sleep studies say that you're like tonight, Sunday night, you're really sleeping for Tuesday. The sleep you have tonight is going to affect how you feel on Tuesday, not so much the sleep you have tomorrow night. So I always try to make sure I get a couple extra hours in, not the night before the comp, but 2 nights before the comp. And then on the drive to the competition, I'm not good about like talking with anyone because I'm just focused in on, I feel like anything that could distract me in any way, I want to avoid. I have a job to do that I've been training and preparing for, and this is exactly what I'm planning on doing. I know the numbers I want to hit. And so I need to just focus on that and not get into these big conversations with other people or other distractions or anything else. And I'm not as intently visualizing on the drive to the competition. I'm just kind of feeling almost like the drive to the gym, but more intense, that level of energy coming up. And I am still thinking about things like on day of, what am I going to be consuming and when? And I have to be very careful about that because I'll get so caught up in the competition that I'll forget, okay, I should have some Gatorade right now, or I should have a handful of nuts and raisins or something. So Victoria's great about keeping on me. And she says, it looks like an explosion goes off because when I show up, you have all that stuff in your bag. You have your bag of many things. You have all your Ollie shoes and your wrist wraps and your elbow sleeves and your knee sleeves, and 3 different kinds of shoes because you might be pulling a truck or whatever. And when I'm at a competition, whether it be Highland Games or Strongman, I'll get everything wrapped up, whatever. I'll do the log press and then I'll just take it off and I won't put it back in my bag and I'll grab the stuff for the next event because I want to get over there and make sure that I have as much time and access to the equipment as possible to get ready for the next event. Because you got to be aggressive at these you got to be aggressive at these competitions. If you have 25 competitors in your class and there are 2 yokes to warm up on and they give you 10 minutes and you want to hit a couple of weights on the way up, well, you got to jump in there. You can't just be like, okay, anybody else want to go? Anybody else? Because you're never going to touch it before it starts.
Man, that's good stuff. You're right. I'm glad you opened up about the drive to the competition and stuff. You mentioned Victoria, your wife, who I've met and is a very wonderful woman. How important do you think it plays in your lifting and competitive career to have someone, a spouse that is really supportive and helpful. And how much of a role does she play in your daily life to make you a better athlete?
Yeah, see, she's at all the competitions, and she's yelling and screaming and taking pictures and following me around and making sure that I'm getting my food and my water and spraying me with sunscreen so I don't get burned. All these Highland Games competitions that are outdoors, making sure I have a hat, all those things that I've kind of taken off my own plate because I'm not thinking about those things. And so the first competition that we went to together, she thought I was a jerk because I wasn't talking about anything except for the competition. I was very short on all responses because I'm just focused in and I can't get distracted in my mind. Right. And then she realized that's just how he is on competition day. He's not trying to be mean or rude or anything, but he's just so focused that anything else is something that he's not going to want to talk about right now. So and then she prepares a lot of my meals, and she's always very supportive. And frankly, there are times when she's had to be the voice of reason, where I'm all beaten up. I don't feel good. I have some nagging kind of, not injuries, but nagging problems. And I'll be like, okay, going to the gym. And she'll be like, is that the best idea today? And I used to just never take a day off. And so now instead of taking a day off, I'll stay here and she'll do Graston on my calf where I tore my Achilles. And she'll work on my bicep, and then I'll be on the ground, doing a bunch of rolling on tubes and like lacrosse balls and all that kind of stuff. And that ends up being better than if I had gone to the gym and, if I'm already just a ball of knots in my muscles and making it worse, that wouldn't have been a very beneficial day.
Yeah. Wow. And you mentioned she does photography. I'm assuming did she take this picture? One of. Yeah, a couple of awards there. That was just one contest.
yeah. Like that's Douglas County Highland Games. It's the Oregon Highland Games Championship.
Okay. As great of an athlete as you are, and you are a great athlete, I call you the cyborg because of your longevity, and you're really, for the longevity, the minimal amount of injuries you have, which we'll talk about here in just a second. But let's talk about how you also give back you're still a highly competitive athlete yourself, focused on you and your competitions, but you also give back. You put on at least one contest a year, the Static Monsters. If I'm ever up for doing a grip contest, you're like, heck yeah, let's do it. I mean, you're always up for giving back. And I think that's so neat. Plus you're a coach. You've coached many athletes in both Highland Games and Strongman and even grip. Talk a little bit about like how much you enjoy coaching and why you feel the need to give back when so many athletes don't. It's all about themselves when their career ends, not that yours has ended, but when theirs ends, they walk away. You never hear or see from them again, and they never give back to something that's made them so happy for so many years. And here you are in the midst of your career. Why do you put on competitions? I mean, what do you get out of that? Well,
let me start by saying, this is my 25th year of being a high school teacher. And I just, I chose teaching because I like being able to open up opportunities for other people. It makes me feel good. So it's actually a little bit, I'm doing it because it makes me feel good and it helps them. So everybody wins. And I put on a Highland Games competition this last year, and I put on Static Monsters, stuff like that. But the reason I do that is because I want these people to have an opportunity to do these things that like you said, the perfect word is joy. I've found so much joy, and I almost all of my friends have come through the sporting world. Almost everybody that I hang out with and talk with and fly across the country to visit, and they fly to visit us and stuff. It's all we met them at a Highland. I met my wife at a Highland Games. So I've just had a tremendous time doing this stuff, and I've learned a lot over the years. And part of it is I'm trying to help other people avoid the mistakes that I made because, I didn't have equipment. I didn't know what I was doing when I got into strongman. I was kind of making it up as I went. Same thing in Highland Games. And there wasn't really anybody around that could really coach you and tell you, okay, here's the proper technique, and here's how you're going to put yourself in a good position to do well and not hurt yourself, things like that. And so every Saturday I have a Highland Games practice that there are a bunch of people that I talk to that are welcome to come. I don't charge them anything. I just want them to get better at it. And a lot of times, they'll offer to pay you. And I'm like, here's how you can pay me. Hit PRs. Because it's hard for me now to hit PRs because I'm about 20 pounds down from when I was at my biggest and strongest. And so PRs are very rare for me anymore. So I try to live kind of vicariously through the people that I coach. And then, there's some people that come up from Salem and stuff. They'll come to Inner Beast, and I'll coach them for strongman, and I'll help people prepare for, especially like for feats of strength each year, and go through like the fine little details of each event, setting yourself up for the best possible outcome. How to start a farmer's walk really quickly. How to make that turn without the weight swaying across your legs. All those little things that if nobody's telling you otherwise, you're probably going to run into these mistakes all the time. So it's awesome when you can make a few little corrections and it makes a big difference in their result. So I get a kick out of that. And, the sport has given me a ton and for a long time. So why wouldn't I give back?
Yeah. Well, we definitely thank you for all that you do here in the Northwest and Oregon specifically, to give back, the giving back that you do, putting on the contest. I mean, you've kind of resurrected grip again after it was dormant for quite a long time. And like I said, you're always up for stuff. And we thank you for your enthusiasm and willingness to give back like that. Cause I know it's not easy. Just haven't done it myself before.
Yeah.
So especially when you're trying to compete.
Yeah. I'll tell you one of the fun things too. And I learned this from Shannon Hartnett back in the day, in Highland Games. In Highland Games, there's usually 8 events during the day, and they'll give you a lot of Highland Games will give you a medal for each event if you're in the top 3. So if you're doing, 15 Highland Games a year, you might be getting a lot of medals. And so she would bring her medals and give them to little kids. And so for the last about decade, I'll take some medals that I won in like Canada or Scotland or something, and I'll take them to like the Portland Highland Games, and there are little kids around. And so you call a little kid over and you'll tell them, this is a medal that came from Scotland that I won 2 years ago, and I want you to have it. And they beam and they love it. And so it's a great way to give back, because what am I going to do? If you came to my house right now, you would never know. There's one little spot in my basement where I have some of my awards. Most of them I've given away.
Wow.
I don't like displaying them. I don't like it. My whole life isn't just competing. So I don't want people to walk into my house and just be like, there's nothing but awards everywhere and look at what I've done. I don't like that. So I keep the ones that are interesting and cool. There's also, I donated a bunch of trophies because there's a place where you can donate trophies and they repurpose them for Special Olympics. So they take like your nameplate off of there and put a different plate on it and then use them for awards for Special Olympics. So again, what am I going to do with them? And when we put on like static monsters or grip competition or things like that, when I give away those swords came from competitions that I did. So
I remember that. I remember you telling me that, and I was like kind of surprised, but yet not surprised, because that's how good you are about giving back.
What am I going to use them for? I think of that. But I will say this before we move on. Like I said, I keep the awards that are cool and interesting to me. Does this look familiar?
Oh man, really? Oh, that's cool, man. Thank you. I bet you thought that worthy of it. That I admit, I love. I do love that. Yeah, actually,
2003.
Okay, cool. Yeah, the Hell on the Hill, man. That was a fun contest, brutal, and still I've had people talk. Man, so much could be talked about just about that contest, and another show on that one. But that award was so cool. I actually, even though I didn't compete, bought myself one, have it displayed in a case here at home, because it is pretty cool. We skipped over something, and I just want you to touch on it. How important is sleep? Because so many people in the gym, they slam those energy drinks, and you had mentioned you drink those too, but they're big things. They think they're going into beast mode by slamming energy drinks, going in the gym without a whole lot of thought on the drive to the gym, throwing some weights around and yelling and screaming. They think they had a good workout, but then it's effing up their sleep. So, and they brag about, I slept like crap last night and only had, 4 hours sleep, but I got my energy drink. So, and I know that's not what a real athlete does. So how important is sleep in your mind, and how much sleep do you get on an average?
I feel best when I get 8.5 hours.
Okay.
And it varies during the year, because, during the winter months, I generally get a little bit less sleep during the winter months because during the summer months, I'm out usually at least once during the day where I'm outside doing some sort of exercise. And, it's going to be hot. And generally during the summer, because I'm not teaching during the summer, I work out twice a day. So I'm putting out more exertion. I'm tearing down my body further. So then I increase my sleep. So I go up to like 9.5 hours during the summer.
Wow.
And
good for you.
I get to teach once a year. I get to teach a weight training and sports nutrition class. I talk to my students about, you got to sleep appropriate for what your exertion was. Just like you shouldn't be eating the same thing on a day where you're not exercising as on a day where maybe you are exercising for 3 hours. You're playing a soccer game and then going to the gym. Why would you eat the same? And also things like, eat for what you're about to do. Don't eat a bunch of like the little goldfish and chips and stuff like that and have some s'mores and go to bed. No. If you're going to have a high energy food like that, you should do that before your workout.
That's interesting. I always say eat for your goals. Definitely. So perfect segue. Walk me through a day of eating and on your twice a days of training. Walk me through a day, how you would maneuver your eating around that. Like you get up, you have your coffee and breakfast. I'm assuming like what that is. And then let's just walk through either an easy training day for you or a non-training day. So let's start with when you go 2 workouts in a day. Tell me how your day starts.
So that's going to be during the summer, and I'm getting up at about 8 o'clock, 8:30, somewhere in that range. I'm making 5 to 8 eggs and then a bowl of oatmeal with some sort of fruit in the oatmeal. Okay. And so that's breakfast. And I don't drink coffee. I don't like coffee, but I drink. They're called Zip Fizz. You get them from Costco. They're little tubes of powder that have a bunch of B vitamins in them that don't give you like a spike and crash of energy like caffeine does. So it's more stable energy over a longer period of time. So that's what I'll have along with my breakfast. And then I'll wait generally 90 minutes before I go to the gym.
Okay.
And then usually my earlier workout is not going to be the super intense one. I don't feel as strong early in the day as I do. For me, if you said workout somewhere between like 3 and 7, that's ideal, PM. If you said, hey, go to the gym at 8 in the morning and have a good squat workout, that's probably not going to work out for me very well. So 90 minutes later, I go to the gym, and like if it's a leg day, maybe I'm going to do squats later in the day and other leg exercises, do some heavy lunges, and some hamstring work and things like that. Then earlier in the day, I'm going to try to do things that aren't really going to involve my legs much. And I'm also not going to work like a bunch of abs in the morning if I'm going to be bracing with my core heavily in the afternoon. So that first workout of the day is going to be more things like smaller muscle groups. Maybe I'm doing a bunch of lateral flies, some rear delts, maybe some bicep, maybe I'm doing some forearm work. And I wouldn't even mind doing like calves, and then I'll throw in a little bit of cardio at the end of it. But as soon as I finish that, between 15 and 30 minutes after that workout, I'm going to be having usually something that's blended, that's going to have 5 tablespoons of peanut butter in it, 1 scoop of protein powder, maybe 2 scoops of protein powder, and usually almond milk, and sometimes I'll throw in pretty much any kind of cereal. I'll even sometimes use Raisin Bran because the raisins have a lot of potassium, so you're not going to get cramping.
So you're blending all that together?
I'm blending all that together and then drinking.
Oh, interesting.
So that, fast absorption.
Is that on your drive home from the gym then?
No, I don't live that far from the gym. And ideally, the research says between 15 and 30 minutes after is the ideal time to get the protein in and to have some simple sugars along with it. I tried doing the dextrose powder with it for a while, just didn't really like it. But yeah, and I'm pounding that. And then 90 minutes later, I'm having another meal. And usually that meal for lunch, it's going to be just like a big sandwich. So, 2 slices of bread, about a half a pound of meat, some lettuce and onions and stuff like that. Maybe some baked chips on the side, and a Greek yogurt. And then again, a couple hours later, I'm going to have another snack. A lot of times it'll just be like a protein bar. I'll put some peanut butter on each bite of the protein bar as I'm eating it. And that's usually going to be my last meal before I go back to the gym. And then before I go to the gym, I might have a piece of fruit. And then on the way to the gym, like I said, I'm going to have some sort of energy drink. And if I have an energy drink like this size, I'm not going to drink the whole thing. I'm going to drink half.
Okay.
So I'll drink half of it. That's plenty. I have plenty of adrenaline going anyway. So then, I have that workout. And again, 15 to 30 minutes after the workout, I'm going to make sure I'm eating something then. then have a good dinner that doesn't have a ton of carbs. And if it does, they're complex carbs. So a lot of times we do a lot of Hawaiian food. We'll get the teriyaki chicken and rice, things like that, or even the kalua pork, a little bit higher fat, but still really good, easy to eat fast. And then right before bed, I'm going to have some sort of protein. We'll do hard-boiled eggs sometimes where I'll take the hard-boiled egg, cut it in half, and put hummus on each part and eat a bunch of those. Or again, could be a protein bar. A lot of times it ends up just being a shake.
Okay.
And then I also take vitamins twice a day.
I was going to ask you next to your vitamins. Yeah. What supplement-wise, what do you take?
In the morning, I take fish oil, a CalMag zinc, and glucosamine, two tablets of glucosamine and chondroitin that come from Costco. And then in the evening, I take vitamin C, 2 more, because you're supposed to have 2 servings, which are 2 pills each for the glucosamine. So I have 2 more of those. And then depending on the time of year, sometimes in the morning I'll take vitamin D if there isn't a lot of sunlight.
Yeah.
And I'm spotty about the coenzyme Q10 that's supposed to help your telomeres and help your cells from aging as much. I take that sometimes, and I also take turmeric sometimes, because pretty much everything, all the research says that for your brain health and for your blood health, that turmeric and fish oil are about the 2 best things you can have. And when I take my vitamins in the evening, I also take in some olive oil. So I have a squeeze bottle, almost like a ketchup bottle, but full of olive oil. And so I'll just squirt about a shot worth of oil into my mouth and take my vitamins with it, because olive oil is a great medium chain triglyceride as long as you don't heat it. If you heat it, it breaks down the structure and it's not as good for you.
Correct. Yeah. I know everybody always talks about it's really made for salads and stuff, or the way you take it, because you're right. It's not one you want to cook in. That's more from macadamia nut or avocado oil that I take. Yeah, I'm a big vitamin guy too. So do you do a multivitamin at all or not?
I don't.
Okay. Yeah.
I tried one for a while and didn't feel anything from it. Oh, the other thing I started taking was one of my cousins is an orthopedic surgeon who works on elbows and things. And he recommended there's a low dose. It's called indomethacin. It's an anti-inflammatory. And so it reduces things like ibuprofen or Aleve. I don't like to take any kind of like medication if I can at all avoid it. Like after surgeries, I don't like taking, Oxycontin or Vicodin. I'll just take Tylenol or Advil for a couple of days and then call it. But this stuff is it's 25 milligrams, so there's less of it going into your system that your body has to process, and it's just something you already take one pill once a day. And he says it's going to build up over time, and then it'll help with any kind of like arthritis or joint pain.
Interesting.
So, hoping.
Yeah, well, obviously it's working for you. I'm jumping back really quick because I'm real into training forearms and stuff myself, and that's just something you do not see people train in the gym. Tell me about your forearm workout. How often, and then what do you do for forearms? Because that's just a rarity anymore, it seems like.
Yeah. Depending on what I'm doing for my back work, if I'm doing a lot of either T-bar rows or if I'm doing seated rows with a cable machine, things like that, and a lot of times when I do my deads, I start out double overhand up to 3 or 4 plates. And then I'll go to putting on like Versa grips or straps or figure eights. So if I'm doing a lot of that, then I don't feel like I need to work my forearms for several days. And, when I even do I'll do shrugs with whatever how gyms vary and how heavy their dumbbells are. But when I do shrugs, I'll also stand there and I'll just curl my fingers up and my wrists in while I'm holding the weight down low and try to work them that way. And then I also will put my arm on a bench so that it's hanging over the end, and I'll roll the weight down to my fingertips. I'll roll it back up and then curl at the top. And I'll do that until my fingers really can't take it anymore. And then I'll just work that top part and I'll do sets of that to failure, to the point where, you touch your forearm and it feels like it's solid because it's so comfortable. But the thing I'm bad about is I don't do as many reverse.
Oh, okay.
Curls.
I do. I love working with fat grips a lot. Do you do much fat grip work?
Well, I use an Apollon's axle a lot.
Oh, okay. I
don't put fat grips on, but yeah. And then I don't do the grippers all that often anymore.
Right.
I actually got there's a digital gripper now where you can squeeze it and it'll record how hard you're gripping it. And it'll record that, so the next time you do it, it'll show you what your previous one was.
Oh, cool.
And you can try it with different hands and things like that. So that's an interesting one. Cool.
How close are your hands to being the same strength? Is one way out?
Well, I can do a number 2 gripper with my left, almost a 2.5. And on good days, I can close the 2.5, not too hard on the right. And I'm not quite at hitting the 3 right now. There have been times where I've been able to close the 3. Right now, I'm probably like 3 or 4 millimeters apart.
Wow, man.
Well, relatively, but not super close. On the gripper thing, when you squeeze that, it tells you a number, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
What my right is 163, my left is 148.
Okay, but yet it is funny because the transfer over, your left doesn't give out sooner on a farmer's walk than your right. So you're. Oh, it did.
When I first started strongman, that was my issue. Was my left. The farmers was not a good event for me because my left would open up, and so when we used to do the holes at Jungle Gym.
Yeah.
When we were at Noel's place. And we would do those like 30-second holds at the end of a farmer's walk, things like that. That definitely helped catch it up quickly.
Oh, interesting.
So now, not so bad.
Yeah. Are you doing okay as far as your time frame? I know we've covered. Okay, cool. Because we've got to go into your injuries. You've had, for your longevity, you've had very few injuries, but you have had a couple, and one of them would be an injury that would put somebody out completely and no longer have a career anymore. You came back relatively quick from it, and it was a full rupture of the Achilles tendon. Talk about that, and talk about how the heck you came back from that injury.
Yeah, that was terrible timing. It was 5 weeks before my 40th birthday, and had already done a couple of events and was training farmer's walk, and it was like my 6th or 7th set. And fully warmed up and everything, 320 a hand, 100 feet straight shot. And so I'm walking with it, and I had my training partner videoing it, and I felt really good at about 70, 75 feet. And so I decided I was going to try to accelerate for the last 25 because it was the last set. And right when I tried to accelerate, it felt like one of the weights had fallen off and hit me in the back of my left Achilles area. And as soon as it happened, I immediately dropped the weights, and I kind of jumped over them get away from them, and then I started trying to walk, and I just couldn't push off. And so went to the hospital right away. ER doc said, I'm gonna put my hand up, you try to push on my hand with your foot. And I was able to push just a little bit because there's still some other things connected. And he said, partial rupture, you'll be fine in 6 weeks. So came back in to see a specialist, and she did this test that's called the Thompson Test. They lay you face down with your feet hanging over the end of a table, and they squeeze your calf and see if your foot moves. If it doesn't move, it's a full rupture. And so she told me, she was like, yeah, it's a full rupture. As soon as she said that, she 6 to 12 months to rehab. And I started I've never had a panic attack, I don't think. I might have that at that point because my ears started ringing a little bit. I started seeing little dots of light.
Yeah, I've been there.
I had already arranged all of these competitions that I was going to do. I'd already paid for airfare and hotels and all this stuff, and everything had been going great in training. And yeah, when I started coming back from that, it was rough. I mean, even like riding a recumbent bike.
Well, real quick, you had surgery on it.
Had surgery. They said if I did the surgery, there would be a 5% chance of re-rupture. They always tell you it's never going to be as strong again. Right. And then if you just let it heal by itself, you'll lose about 20% of the strength. And I said, okay, well, repair it. And she did a great job. I never had a problem with it again. Sometimes that calf gets really tight, and I have to stay on top of it as far as stretching it and grinding on it. But yeah, they said 6 to 12 months. And in my head, I was like, I'll be back in 2. No, it took me 3 months before I could jump rope. And that's the thing that really actually helped me coming back was I started doing it where I would jump rope as many times as I could in a minute, and then I would take a minute off, and then I would do it again. And I did that until I got to the point where I could do 100 jumps in 40 seconds, and then I would take 30 seconds off and do 100 jumps. But just that constant and having the impact on it definitely helped strengthen it back up. But yeah, that whole year was shot. I didn't compete at all that whole year.
Was that also doing the jump rope? Was that kind of building your confidence with it back up too?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I will tell you this: the first time I did a farmer's walk after that, Francis Brebner, who does a bunch of Highland Games stuff and is an ex-world record holder, he hosted a games in Dunsmuir. He had what he calls stones of strength. You're doing 5 different stone events. You're throwing a stone, you're pressing a stone, you're doing a duck walk with a stone, and you're loading atlas stones, stuff like that. at the end of the day, he tells me, oh, by the way, tomorrow I'm putting on a strongman. I want you to compete. I was like, okay. So first event, I get out there, they have farmer's walk. I haven't done farmer's walk since I ruptured my Achilles doing farmer's walk, and I'm going against Oud Haugen. Yeah.
Really?
One of the best farmers guys on fat handles, fat aluminum handles, max distance. They have cones in dirt 40 feet apart, just walk until you can't hold them anymore. And of course, but I didn't really push off of my toes during that event because I was afraid, Achilles is going to snap again. But now I don't worry about it anymore.
Well, how'd you end up doing in that competition?
In the first day, the Stones of Strength, a guy named Casey Garrison, who was the defending champion, there were no weight classes. He won it. And this guy from Nebraska they were both like 6'6", 320, got second, and I managed to get third that day. And then in the strongman the next day, I had a bad pressing event early on, but then I was catching up. And then they said, because we're short on time, because they were doing this on Cox cable and they were going to air it in Europe, they said, we're going to cut out, they had a Highland Games event, the weight for height, which is one of my best events. And they're like, we're going to cut that one. So that was really disappointing. So I ended up missing the podium by 1 point that day.
Oh, man. Well, are you to the point now that you don't even think about the Achilles tendon anymore because it's in your past and you've done so much since then? Do you even think about it while you're doing an event anymore? Does it hold you back at all?
I have to intentionally put it out of my mind. I love Magnus Samuelsson had this saying that was on the day of the competition, you put the needles on red and hope nothing breaks. You don't think about it during. You put the needles on red. You push as hard as you can. If it breaks, it breaks. You'll deal with it afterwards.
Damn. You've also, and we'll get past this because I feel it's almost negative, but we learn from this too, though. You've had other than that injury, you've really only had a couple others, and that's your biceps, correct?
Right, and they were both stupid things where I was out of position.
Oh, is that right?
The first one was I was getting ready for feats of strength. I had a hoodie on. And I was doing a yoke carry, and it started to slide down my hoodie, and my hoodie started to stretch out. So it was getting down behind me, and in the comp, you can't drop. So I tried to have my arms behind me and hike it back up onto my shoulders. And when I did that, I felt a big pop in my left bicep tendon. It didn't come off all the way, though. And so that same day, I went for a second training session down in Salem, and I went to pick up a stone, and it sounded almost like Velcro. It was like, shh, and that was it. And so I had to get that repaired. And then the other one was I was making a retaining wall in my yard, and I dropped a railroad tie on my hand, and it was all swollen up and beat up. And 2 days later, I decided to throw in a competition anyway because I'd signed up for it and everything. And it was all swollen. And so I couldn't really grip onto the handle of a weight that we're throwing. So instead of gripping it, I pulled my arm in real tight here instead of keeping your arm straight like you're supposed to. And so, again, I came around and I felt a pop. And I did that little test where you check and see if the tendon is still there, and it was. So then we go to the weight for height, and as I throw the weight for height, pop, there goes the rest.
Jesus.
So both things I put myself in a bad situation.
So how do you mentally, because here you are, this great athlete, and I know you aren't one to want to give it up anytime soon. How do you mentally not get really depressed and all that when you're going through all this and having to sit out competitions, and especially the one where you did your Achilles, where you had all this competitions on your calendar, paid for a lot of them. How did you, I mean, I'm sure you suffered a little bit of depression, but how'd you get through it on your rehab and as you're sitting there on the healing process, which is the worst part? The injury sometimes isn't the worst. I mean, it sucks that you get injured, but it's after the surgery, and it's the long period of the rehab and the
right.
Just sitting there thinking about stuff. How'd you not get depressed? And if you did, how'd you get through that?
Well, the most frustrating part was the Achilles was way worse than the biceps because with the Achilles you can't walk. I mean, you can, you're in a boot. I was on a knee scooter for a while. I was on crutches for a while. At one point, I was really worried that I had re-ruptured it because the side of the scooter hit a table and it spun, and so I ended up having to step on that foot while I was still in the cast. And I'd read these stories about people who they had taken the cast off and they had stepped wrong and it had re-ruptured, and like the tendon was sticking out and had dried out and stuff like that. So they were never the same. So I was worried about that, but I basically went into like, how can I prevent myself from losing all my conditioning and everything in the rest of my body? So now if I'm at a time where I can't work on that calf at all, how am I going to keep my upper leg strong? And what else can I work on during this time that maybe I can try to improve? So I tried to look at it as, okay, this is what it is. I can't control that for now. As soon as it gets out of the cast, I can start working on it. And I don't want to go slow on the rehab, because I'm worried that the longer that it takes me to get back to full strength, that it's never going to get back to full strength.
Wow.
If it's weak for 2 or 3 months, okay, if that's what it has to be. But if I leave it weak for 6 months, is it ever going to be as strong as it was, or even close? So it's all about, okay, how can I optimize the time that I have and just try to reduce the negative on what's going to happen. Because the most impressed I was when they took the cast off, because I would sit there and I would just try to isometrically flex my calf while it was still in the cast. And I would do that hundreds of times a day, and thinking, hey, that'll be enough stimulation that when they take the cast off, it's only been a couple of weeks, it'll be fine. No, it had dropped 2.5 inches.
Wow.
In 2 weeks. Actually, a little over 2 weeks, because there were a few days before the surgery, but 2.5 weeks after the surgery. Yeah. And so, yeah, as soon as you see it, then you're like, okay, how fast can I get this back? And so it became, I got to look at this as, okay, here's an opportunity, and I have to be smart about this to get it back. I can't sit around and just be like, okay, I'm never going to compete again, and this is the end of my career.
That's interesting. Yeah, because I think I mentioned to you that in July of 2019, I did a complete quadricep rupture.
Right.
And to have surgery, and that was tough because I was like you, I want to get back going on training as soon as possible. Not that I'm training for a contest, but just being stagnant driving me crazy. And I did get pretty depressed, I got to admit. Then right when my training kind of started going again, COVID hit and all the gyms shut down, which made things worse. But yeah, it's tough. It's tough sitting around after an injury, and it's keeping a positive mindset. I mean, that's actually where you find out how mentally strong of a person you are, is when you can get through something like that, and obviously you have. What, as far as competitions, and because you've had such longevity, do you see retirement in your near future, or no? Or
I don't think so. I'm basically going to go until I'm kind of forced to retire. Like my body breaks down enough that I just can't compete. But I will tell you this. I think a lot of, this is very deep seated in me. By the way, I just want to mention one thing. You talk about goals a lot. Yeah, and I totally believe in that, and setting goals, short-term goals, long-term goals, all that. And that always makes me optimistic, because it's like, okay, how can I kind of backwards plan from where I want to be for a competition or anything? I think it's the same thing in like injuries. It's like, okay, so now I have this obstacle that I have to overcome. My goal is to get back to where I was. What are the steps to get there? And once you have those steps kind of in place, and you know that you can go through the process, and you're mentally strong enough to go through that process, then it's like, okay, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. I can get back to doing well. But hang on, I just got off track there. What was the question again about how many?
Well, kind of about your longevity, and do you see retirement and that kind of?
No, I'm still really enjoying it, and I really enjoy the preparation part. I also enjoy, there's a lot of camaraderie among the athletes, especially, when you're doing well enough that, you can travel to some of these things like the Arnold or some of these other bigger competitions around the country. You're going to see a lot of the same people over the years, because, the people that are around the same level in each of these things kind of get grouped together. And so you build some relationships there, and that's really fun for me. We just went and visited some friends in Wisconsin that we met. One of them used to compete in strongman against Zydrunas, did really well against him. She has a bunch of records in Highland Games and is now doing Masters Olympic weightlifting. So it's, you have these people that you can talk. It's like talking with you. We have a bunch that we can talk about, whereas people that aren't really into competing and lifting and throwing and all that kind of stuff, there's just not nearly as much that you have in common.
Yeah,
so I'll stay with it as long as I can.
Yeah, and I hope that when your time does come and you get to go out on a high note, because I was able to do that with powerlifting and stuff. And it's when you have a career like yours, and my powerlifting was 14-year span, and yours, of course, is much longer than that, even considering it's still going. I hope you'll go out on a high note, not forced to go out. You know what I mean? Go out on your own terms. That's what I would. And Julie, I heard do the same thing, and it's a neat feeling. And I hope that when you do, you're not. And I know you, as well as I know you wouldn't be like this, but you'll always give back in some degree, because I think, and that's what's great. It's funny because I always tease you a little bit, because for as great of an athlete as you are and as marketable as you could and should be, you're not on social media at all. And do you feel, and and I think it's a balance on that, because I think that I, in a way, wish you were a little more, but on the other hand, do you stay away from it because there is so much negativity? I know in powerlifting especially, there's so much backstabbing negativity on social media. Is that kind of why you stay away from it?
No, it makes me feel kind of weird to post too much stuff, or I don't want to feel like I'm posting a bunch of stuff to be like, hey, look at me, look how what I can do, that type of thing. It just, if I'm doing a competition or I have a good lift or something like that, I'm fine posting that. I haven't gotten into like the powerlifting platforms or things like that, so there really hasn't been much negativity. But I don't know, it's just not my wheelhouse. It's not really a comfortable thing for me. And it's not something I really seek out. I've been fortunate enough, I've had a couple of sponsors over the years. Like I took in the metal to have a log welded together. The welder got super into it and then sponsored me and made my Conan's wheel and yoke and some other stuff for me. And then I started going into the Dave's Killer Bread, their headquarters, their bread quarters, and eating lots of their power seed bread. And then the guy who was the manager there was best friends with Dave and got us together, and we started talking, and they're like, hey, we want to sponsor you, and we want you to take coloring books and stickers for the kids at the competitions and take samples of our cookies and our breads and things like that. So that was really cool. That lasted for like 7 years. Then the company got bought out, so that didn't really happen. I've never been comfortable like putting together a resume and going to companies to say, hey, will you give me money for competing? It just feels weird.
I always thought you'd be the perfect athlete for a supplement company to sponsor, because because of your longevity and your status in the sports and the fact you've won the Arnold 2 different times and things like that. I think a supplement company's missing the boat, but on the other hand, they do also look at social media,
right,
how much a person's out there on that. But no, I respect your choice on that, and it shows that you're not just in it, for the praises and the pats on the back. You're in it for your own reason, which is reasons that I can relate to, because I did a lot of my powerlifting stuff in the 80s and 90s, and so there was no social media then, so we did it because of our love for.
I think social media is actually making it a little bit worse as far as competitions, just because there's so many people now that would do well going into like their first competition, but they're afraid they're not going to win. And if they don't win, then what am I going to post on social media? Or somebody else is going to be posting and I'm going to be 5th place. And I don't want people to know that I got 5th place. Right. This whole mentality of if I can't win, if I'm not almost guaranteed to win, I won't compete.
Absolutely. And that's the kind of the direction powerlifting went by. Who knows? God knows, at least 50 or more federations nowadays. Yeah. Multiple weight classes, age groups, and divisions, fire and police division within the same competition, that everybody pretty much wins their title and everybody's a world champion suddenly.
Right?
Yeah. And in the old days, I don't know how far back, if you even go this far back, but maybe you do. In powerlifting, there used to be a magazine that came out called Powerlifting USA, and each issue had the top in that particular, like top 114 pounders, top 123 pounders would be the next month. We'd have to wait about a year for a weight class to come out. Then you saw how you ranked against everybody. And that was really, all these people saying they hold world records, but they're ranked, they didn't even make the top one, because it was always the top 100. Just to make top 100 was great. And here these people, I hold a world record. Well, really, why aren't you on the top 100 list? It kind of set the bar to where if you're good, you make the list, and
well, I did the math on one of those competitions that they had not that long ago, and I looked at it. There were 14 men's weight classes. There were 11 women's weight classes. And then, like you said, you also had it going down to, I think it was starting at 13 years old. It was like 13 to 16, 16 to 19, 20 to 23. Then you had open. Then you had submaster starting at 34. Then every 5 years all the way up, plus all of those again in military, all of those again in police. I did the math. It was 1,276 different classes.
Holy crap.
1,276.
Jesus.
Yeah. You could have 1,000 people. Nobody's in the same class as each other.
Leave it to the mathematician to do that. It's funny. That's awesome. You did that. I appreciate your time today, by the way, just so you know. If we can go a little bit longer, there's a few comments, and some people weren't going to be able to make this live viewing, so they sent me some comments to be able to read to you, if that's okay.
Sure.
First of all, let's I'll go back and forth. I got some in my email and I got some with in the comment box here of like Julie. She's watching right now.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Julie Havelka.
Hi, Julie.
She says, great to see Mark on the show. Just realized he was at my first strongman comp in 2000 and my last in 2004. Great memories. California would have been the 2004 contest.
Yeah.
She also wrote, I remember Mark contributed to my strongman training book with his throwing technique as he is a master at the throwing events. And speaking of that, here's Julie's book right up here. Let me grab it really quick. Because Mark, you're in here quite a bit, so we appreciate. I know she appreciated you doing the segment because we knew nothing about the throwing. You got her into throwing a little bit. That remember that keg toss at McTarnian's?
Yeah, that's all I really do. Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah, but anyway, she thanks you for that. And that, by the way, folks, that book can be purchased through my website, trapauthority.com. And then Julie wrote one more thing, and I'll get to some emails. She wrote, I remember one stone lift workout we had at the gym. It might have been at my house though, but at the gym, I think it was Mark who loaded a stone and then it fell somehow and broke in two. Was that you, Mark? And do you remember that crazy workout?
I absolutely do. Yeah, that was at Junction. It was on the
gym. Okay.
Which, by the way, remember Julie's dad had made that wooden platform?
Yeah.
I had that platform from you guys for years in my basement. I made basically a stone loading room, rubber mats. Wow. I made a platform that could do 4 stones, and I had that one that could do 2 stones on the end. And until just recently, I had taken it down and let Will Dinwiddie use it to train people on. So that platform has made its rounds. So the big ones I remember on that platform were, I had that stone. It was like a 330 stone, I think. It rolled off the side, split in half. And I had poured part of the cement and then mixed more and then poured the rest. And so I think that was what made it weak. And then I also remember I made a 293 stone. And I remember when Julie loaded that out in front of your house on that platform.
Yeah.
That was probably the heaviest stone loaded by a woman at that point.
You know, you're right, because this was early 2000. Well, 2003, 2004, 2002. Yeah, that was, like I said, you definitely helped make her the champion she later became to be. And those workouts were just incredible. And we can't thank you enough for those. Let me go to a couple of emails here real quick. There's a guy, Dave O'Neill. He sent a message. Dave is a big powerlifter guy, and he very strong. I mean, he's 350 pounds. I mean, he played semi-pro football and everything. Good friend of mine. Anyway, he wrote, every time I competed in a meet and Mark was there, I'm like, oh, great, Wechter's here. My plans are foiled. Hell of a lifter.
That's cool.
Yeah, that is cool, because coming from him, he's a neat guy. Let's see, another guy because I posted this interview on the Northwest Grip Enthusiasts Facebook page. Everybody's welcome to join that if they'd like. And a guy, Simon Stewart, wrote, I competed. Oh, you know Simon?
Oh, I know Simon.
Oh, great. He wrote, I competed against Mark back in 2000 to 2002. Solid Highland Games guy. I would love to hear what he is up to. Well, hopefully he's watching the show or will watch it, and he'll be able to get all his updates.
Well, let me tell you this real quick. I started competing in when I was competing in Spokane. Simon Stewart would show up each year in the Highland Games, and he was young. He was like 18, 19 at the time, and he was a high school shot putter. And when he got to college, he was throwing big numbers and front squatting big numbers. In the Highland Games, if you can throw over 40 feet with the 56-pound weight, then you're one of the better pros in the world. He showed up as an amateur, and I think he threw 46 feet, and the world record at the time was like 48.10.
Jesus.
So just a phenomenal. And he, the craziest thing I ever saw from him was, for whatever reason, he couldn't throw the hammer spinning it the normal way that you would. It's like he had an injury or something. So he did it the opposite direction and threw it. Right hand, he would throw like 120 feet. So he spins it the other way and throws like 116 feet. It's just fantastic. Wow. Fantastic.
Yeah, sounds like it. Wow.
Last I heard, he was training to try to make the Olympics for shot put, and he was like training in Denmark or someplace.
Wow. Yeah, he posted on the I knew he was from out of the country, and he posted, at least that's what my thought was, and he posted in the Northwest Grip Enthusiast on that page. And so I know if you ever feel like posting a little something, feel free on that, because I know everybody loves to hear from you. And then let's see, I had another one here. Let me go back to it. Gordon Smith wrote, a super athlete is willing to help even the weakest and novice a lifter to get better. Great person to seek advice from. I'm blessed to know him. He has helped me tons. See, people, I mean, it's nothing but respect for you, man. There's no like
awesome. He and his wife compete in strongman, and I think he's coming up on 60, and I think she's in her 50s, and they're still competing. Yeah.
Wow. That's it for the there's a competition coming up, and it's a fun little one. It's their first one putting it on. It's by these guys that have a podcast show called Couch Potato Strong, and they do a lot of grip stuff and that kind of stuff. And they're actually hosting their first competition. The flyer's on my website, and I don't have it the date in my mind right now exactly when it is. I want to say the first week Saturday in July, but if I know you're really busy with Highland Games stuff and during that phase, but if you're not, I'll send you the flyer. And I know if you came out and made an appearance, it would really make the event pretty cool. But I know, again, that's your busy season. So, but
let me know how to make it work.
Yeah. I know we're going to do kind of a celebration thing, because when I was talking to them, I realized it's the 20th anniversary this year of the first ever Rolling Thunder contest that I put on. So we're going to kind of do a 20th anniversary thing at their contest to kind of help build the contest just a little bit. But anyway, I'll send you information on that, because I know they'd love to have you there. But other than that, I think we kind of covered everything. Is there anyone you'd like to thank? Any shout outs you want to do? Anything you want to promote? Please feel free right now.
If I started doing shout outs, we'd be here for a long time. I have so many people have helped me so much along the way. I mean, I've been competing in this stuff for Highland Games for over 25 years now, and been doing strongman for like 22 years now. Yeah. And I wouldn't want to miss anybody, but
that makes sense.
I will tell you this, as far as like digging deep, because you wanted to get into my mindset, I will tell you one more thing. I think the reason that I am so kind of driven and competitive is my father, when he was 17 years old, got in a car accident where he got thrown head-on collision, got thrown through the windshield, ended up in the hospital for a year and a half, ended up making a 9-inch long kidney stone from being in the hospital so long, partially severed his spine, had all these problems. Couldn't bend his fingers like this. He could only bend them kind of like this. Couldn't ever walk right. And he had been the fastest kid in his school. He was a really good athlete. And then he just couldn't use his body in an athletic way anymore after that. So I think deep down for me, it's like, I'm going to get everything I can out of this body that I was given until it breaks. And I would rather, have done a bunch of cool stuff that I really enjoyed and have it break than just, not do anything and not really challenge myself. And it's like they say, when you're old, everything's going to hurt, whether you did a bunch of damage along the way to getting old or whether you didn't do anything. So and that's, I've always been attached to numbers and seeing how far can I push my body. That's, there are obviously limitations as far as height, even just joint size. Because when I start training really, really heavy, that's what usually breaks down is wrists and elbows start to hurt, shoulders start to go bad, left knee starts to hurt. Because if I go way back, I was a Little League pitcher for 7 years, then Javelin for 11 years, and then Highland Games for 25 years. So basically my whole life, I've been throwing where you plant on your left leg and twist. And so that's starting to catch up to that left knee. So someday, knee replacement, who knows? But had a lot of fun along the way.
Wow, what a great story about your dad. Is your father still with us anymore, Mark?
Oh, he made it to 60. They actually told him, because of the damage to his spine, that the longest they'd ever seen anybody live like that was till 67. He made it till 66. So he always knew where that number was and how long he had, which was, it'd be kind of nice to know in some ways. So you can pack in whatever you want before that. Yeah.
That's neat in some way. By doing what you do, it's like he was so physically able in his day before the car wreck, almost like you're taking on some of that on you to be physical for him also. That's what a great story. What a great way to kind of wrap up this interview too. And Mark, I thank you so much for your time. Like 21 years ago when I first met you, I never would have thought I'd be interviewing you this many years later. And I appreciate the time you've given me. Heck, it's been almost 2 hours, my longest interview yet. And I feel like there's still so much more to be talked about, and I'd like to have you back sometime. And even if it's just bringing you back on talk about like little segments, or if you're going to promote a contest, anything, man, I'd love to catch you right before you go to a competition that you've been training for a while and talk a little bit. And because you're just such a neat guy, and I can't tell people enough, because there's a lot of people that don't know you and they kind of think you have, and I've told you this, isn't it? They think that, oh, Mark, he's got kind of an ego, but anyone that has taken the time to get to know you, know that is the furthest from the truth, that you're the most giving guy out there. You're just confident. And we talked about that today. And I think that's so cool that you are such a big hearted give back person. And I thank you for what you've done in my life, as far as back when I was still competing, how you came into our crew, helped Julie become one of the greatest strong women out there, next to like Jill Mills, and names like that. And so what you've done just for us, and the memories you've gave me and Julie, and also it's just, we can't say thank you enough. Let me just real quick. I was supposed to be my little wrap up, but I just want to say real quick, I'm going to throw a couple names at you and just have you give some thoughts. Let's going back to that old crew. Bryce Gimbel.
Oh, 854 squat at 21 years old, something like that. Just talk about talent. I felt bad at that California strongman that was Julie's last, because I think it was Jim Glassman, had been a pro, had taken a year off, so he was no longer considered pro, and they were giving away a pro card for the heavyweights, and Bryce ended up getting second to Jim Glassman, who was like re-winning his pro card. Otherwise, Bryce was pro.
Yeah.
I was hoping that he would stick with it longer, because he was awesome.
He was big and fast, but I think some of that, he had that anyway, but he learned a lot of that from you, the speed stuff, because he had the powerlifting power, the lower body strength, but he got a lot of speed and mental toughness to carry a heavy farmer, because he was doing 300 pounds in each hand farmer's work at that time. And that was pretty big deal from back then. Right. And so Jason Wands, there's a name for you. One of our old people. Remember when he made that Hucifeld stone for us? Yeah. He made that like concrete Hucifeld stone that you could load weights onto the corners of and all that. Yeah, he was at the beginning. It was like you, me, Julie, and Bryce. Then he came in later, but he brought a good attitude. Yeah. And it was kind of cool that, when we were trying to help him, it made you have to go into that mode of, okay, what's he doing? What should he be doing? How can you change that, and really kind of analyze things as you were working with him? Yeah, I saw Bryce and Jason at the 24-hour fitness in Clackamas a couple of years ago. Okay, yeah, that's the last time. That's the last time I saw that. And one more name, because I got to get your thoughts. Julie Havelka. Oh man, Julie's awesome. She had that intensity and fire, just like the drive to really work hard, know it was going to be painful, didn't care. And when she just put her mind to something, there was no stopping her. And just such a kind-hearted, nice person. Perfectly said. It gave me chills, because you said exactly my thoughts when I first met her. That's exactly how she was, and continued to be. Well, thank you again, Mark. And again, a lot of time was taken out of your day, and I appreciate you giving that to me. You're always going to be someone that I look up to and respect for many reasons. And I thank you for doing this interview with me, and please come back another time. Absolutely. And I really appreciate, again, I said it before, you're the one. You kind of opened the door for me in strongman by inviting me into that crew, and then all that help, all that feedback, because a lot of times you were the one who was kind of planning out what we were going to be working on for those Saturdays and all that stuff. So my career would not have been the same without all that help from you. Wow. I'm very humbled. I'm very humbled by that. Thank you so much, Mark. And we will be talking soon, man. Okay. Sounds good. All right. Bye.